1 year ago, I took my Shahada and I became a Muslim, and here are the 5 most difficult things since taking my Shahada. I've got them listed on my phone so I can, go through them and not forget anything. But let's start with some of the most difficult things reverts find, or at least I found, when I converted to Islam. Number 1 on the list, and this is not by order, by the way, it's just randomly. I'll read them out and then I'll go through each one. So first of all, we've got going to a mosque, really difficult, really stressful. Learning to pray. Identity crisis, that's an interesting one. Making friends, and then telling your family. Those are the topics I'm going to cover. So let's start with going to a mosque. When you first convert to Islam, everyone's on a different spectrum of knowledge. Some people know a lot about Islam when they convert. Some people just don't know that much, but they feel like it's the right decision. For me, it was a bit of both. I had learned a lot about the religion within 3 months. In the biggest picture of things, after what I've learned now, I didn't really know that much. But going to the mosque was one of my goals. The issue is, you don't really know what to expect when you go to a mosque. Well, at least I didn't. So when I first turned up, it wasn't even, like, my first visit to a mosque wasn't even, like, it wasn't even planned. I was just walking through Cambridge in the UK. And then I happened to be going past the Cambridge Central Mosque, which is a massive wooden, like, there's wooden pillars and it's awesome. And I remember going past there for the past 2 years before I even thought about Islam. And then I found myself outside this mosque and I thought, I've got about an hour and a half spare, maybe 2. Why don't I just walk in and see what it's like? And this was a few weeks after I'd converted to Islam. So I walked in and saw the sign to take off your shoes, and I sort of knew that you had to. I didn't 100% know, but seeing the sign reminded me that, okay, fair enough, I need to take my shoes off. By the way, you always need to take your shoes off if you're going into a mosque. So I took my shoes off and walked in, and it was deserted. No one was there apart from one security guard. So I walked up to the security guard, and by the way, I've heard some noises in the distance as well. I went to the security guard and I said, this is my first time in the mosque, what do I do? And he went, go pray. And I was like, small problem, I don't know how. And he was like, oh, okay, brother, don't worry. And he said, go do wudu, which is the thing where you, like, wash your arms and stuff before you pray. And I was like, got it, gotcha. I'd seen a YouTube video just before, like the day before. So I very mildly knew how to do wudu. Looking back, I had no idea what I was doing, but I tried. And then I went to the wudu room, walked in, very nice mosque, very clean. And I remember going up to the sinks after taking my shoes and socks off and everything, going to, like, the tap area and just making a mess of it. My trousers were completely soaked. It looked like I had pissed myself. There was water everywhere. I just chaos. And I didn't even do it well. Like, I didn't really know what I was doing. I knew I had to wash my arms, but I didn't know how many times. I knew I had to wash my face. I can't even remember what I did, but I know for a fact I got it very, very wrong. And then I came out and I went up to him and I said, okay, back to the security guard. And I said, okay, what do I do now? And he was like, oh, go pray. And I was like, brother, my guy, I don't know how. Still, like, I know it's been 5 minutes, but I still don't know how to pray. And he was like, oh, don't worry, brother. You go pray with me in, like, 5 minutes. And turns out there was a prayer going on in the mosque. It was probably around midday, I'm guessing, so probably dhuhr. There was a prayer going on in the mosque at the time. The one that was midday, the midday prayer. And I arrived as the prayer was happening. So the only person who wasn't in the prayer hall praying was the security guard. So anyways, the security guard finished, the prayer finished, me and the security guard went in, everyone came out, and then the security guard introduced me to, like, 5 people. He was like, Abdullah, come here. And then an awesome guy, Abdullah, who was there for my official Shahada afterwards, which I'll explain now quickly. When I took my Shahada, I was in my bedroom by myself, which is okay, and it counts as my official Shahada. But sometimes when you want to, let's say, go to Mecca, Medina, you might, not always, usually you don't, but you might need a document that says you've taken your Shahada. So that's the second time I took my Shahada officially, but the first actual one when I actually became a Muslim was in my bedroom at 11 p.m. on the 14th of December, yesterday actually, from the day I'm filming this, a year ago yesterday. So anyways, Abdullah Okay, met him. I met all 3 imams of the mosque. I met like 5 other people. Everyone's super nice. And then we went to pray. And whilst I was praying, the security guard kept on like nudging me like that because I kept on doing stuff wrong. So when you kneel down and you're supposed to put your hands on your knees, I was like, just not doing that at all. And then he just like gave me a little slap and I was like, oh, okay. It was just really funny. But anyways, back to the struggle of being a revert. It's the panic of not knowing what you're supposed to do and not knowing if what you're doing is correct, not knowing if you're being disrespectful or respectful. There's a lot of rules that you learn over time which you realise may have been disrespectful. So for example, in a mosque, you're not supposed to walk in front of anyone who's praying. I didn't know that for like the first 3 months. No one really told me. So I just did it. And no one tells reverts this stuff. So as a revert, I was just walking in front of people. And obviously I got some dirty looks because they're like, why? This guy's like not following any of the rules. But I just didn't know them. So that's number 1, is going to the mosque for the first time. It's a scary thing. Number 2, we have learning to pray. Now, the issue with learning to pray is the fact that it's not just one thing you have to learn to do. Each prayer during the day is, for the most part, different. You have a thing called a rakat. Sorry, I got bitten by a mosquito last night, so my arm is very itchy. You've got a thing called a rakat. A rakat is the motion where you go like this, hold your arms, and then go down, bow, go down, and then go on your knees, and so on. That's one rakat, and you do 2 of them during the first prayer, then 4, then 3, then 4. So each prayer is a bit different from the others. And then on top of that, each part of the prayer has a selection of Arabic words that can only be in Arabic. And the reason it can only be in Arabic is to preserve what a prayer actually is. So you have to learn Arabic phrases. You have to learn all the motions for the prayer. You have to learn how different it is for each prayer during the day. And then on top of that, each prayer you have to recite Quran verses, which I'm still struggling with now. Like some Quran verses are very short and very easy, but some of them are quite complex. So learning to recite Quran can be difficult, especially when it's in a foreign language that you've never even thought of before, because it's not suddenly trying to memorize some words. It's now trying to memorize what to you is random noises that you've never heard before. So you have to memorize just a random noise. It's not like a song where you recognize the words and you can sing it over and over again. I know, haram songs. But that just makes it even more difficult. So praying is probably one of the most difficult things when it comes to the learning process. Being completely honest with you, I wouldn't blame yourself if it's been a year since you've converted and you're still struggling to learn. There's a good book called How to Pray. It's in green. Give me 1 second and I'll find it. Okay, never mind. The Kindle app has stopped working completely. But the book is a green book that says how to pray. And it's a good step-by-step process. Now, the important thing to know is that when you are learning, if you get part of the process wrong, it's perfectly okay. If you knowingly know part of the prayer and then knowing that information you get it wrong, then you have to think. Not so good. So when learning to pray, don't panic if you get one bit wrong. If you've prayed part of the prayer and then you realise you did the first bit wrong, don't worry, carry on, complete your prayer, and then make sure you try and remember what you did wrong and fix it on the next prayer. The main thing is not to burden yourself, because it can be a big burden. And by burden yourself, I mean don't overwhelm yourself, because praying, it can get a lot sometimes, and it's a lot to learn. So don't panic if you're not learning quick enough. The most important thing I say is to learn the motions of what you're supposed to do, the movements, because from there you can build up on everything else. Number 3. What was number 3? Identity crisis. Now this is one no one talks about, but it's very, very true. Muslims, in a sense, have this sort of identity around who a Muslim is. And it's not true. I'll break this down for you quickly. Only 20% of the Muslims in the world are Arab, are from the Arab Peninsula. The rest are mostly from Africa. There's many, now there's many all over the world, but the majority are from African countries, whether North Africa, and from Southern Asian, so like Pakistan and India. So when you think of a Muslim, it doesn't really fit into this, right? You know, a white person, whether you're male or female, it doesn't really fit into your criteria. So one of the issues I had was I'd go to the mosque and every single person there would be different to me. Not to the sense that every person would be different, they'd all be different specifically to me. I'd stand out like a sore thumb. If I walked through a mosque, and I noticed it much more when I first converted to Islam, I'd be usually the only white guy in the whole mosque. Now, in the UK, this isn't really that crazy. You will go through a mosque and they do see a lot of reverts. But internally, to you, you'll feel like everyone's watching you, like you stand out, because you know for a fact, you look around you, you're the only white guy in there. And it gives you a bit of an identity crisis. Now, the important thing to note is that, one, when people see a revert, when people see someone who's white, maybe some tattoos or, you know, clearly wasn't a Muslim before, and then they converted to Islam, they suddenly become the happiest person in the world because they realize someone has converted to Islam, someone has chosen Islam, which is really special. So they love that. But you don't know that. So that's why I'm telling you, people love the fact that you converted to Islam. So when you feel like everyone's watching you, the chances are it's because they admire you. They're like, this guy's awesome. It's important to also talk to some of those people because then you suddenly realize, just how I did, that they all are super, super accepting and they love that you're part of the community. For example, when I first started speaking to some of the people in my mosque, they'd just start giving me free stuff. One gave me the prayer rug that I have here. Mr. Abdullah, that I mentioned before, gave me this prayer rug that I still have to this day. And right now I'm in Dubai, for example, and I brought it with me. Then other people just gave me free stuff. I went to a coffee shop and I told them, oh, I like your bathroom, like it's built sort of in an Islamic way because there's like the tap for, you know, washing yourself and stuff. And he was like, oh, how do you know about that? And I said, oh, I converted to Islam 4 months ago or 3 months ago. And he was like, mashallah. Ever since that day, whenever I go there, he refuses to let me pay. And I have to wait for him to go to the back of the kitchen for me to go to a staff member and say, can you just add it on so I can pay? Because otherwise he refuses to let me pay. So people, these Muslims, although you feel like you stick out a lot, and theoretically, physically, you look like not a Muslim, when you start to become part of the community, you realize that they are super accepting and super loving of you. So the identity crisis thing is normal. You will go through an identity crisis. On top of that, a lot of your habits during the day, a lot of the things that you may be used to doing, you may realize are not quite that correct. So you'll start stopping doing them, which doesn't seem like a big deal, but it sort of is in a sense changing your identity, and that can be a bit of a shock after some time, especially if like you don't even think about it, and then one day you suddenly click, you're like, oh my god, my life is completely different. I'm hanging out with completely different people. When I go to a mosque, like I'm the only one who stands out, and it can be a bit overwhelming. But don't worry, identity crisis is a completely normal thing, and it's something that only you worry about. Because everyone else loves you for choosing Islam. Everyone else loves you for choosing Islam. Number 4, making friends. Now, this goes back to the whole, when you first go to a mosque, you feel a bit, you feel like you are separated in a sense because you look very different to everyone. Now, I learned this after many times going to a mosque. There are a few ways you can make friends, and it's easier, especially the fact that you're a revert makes it easier than being any other sort of Muslim. Let's not try and put it into groups, but if you are a Muslim born into Islam, into like a Southern Asian family or Arab family, and then you're a revert, you being a revert makes it easy for you to make friends, but you don't know that. Now that I've told you, you do. Here's what you do. Anyone in the mosque, and I mean anyone, that you go, when you go in the mosque, see someone, walk up to them and say, if you don't know the words Assalamu alaikum, you can say hello, and say, I converted to Islam recently. what are some things you would suggest? Or just say, can you help me reciting to learn the first chapter of the Quran? Or can you recommend an app or something for praying? These people, pardon the French, I'm actually not going to swear on camera. These people will love the fact that you've walked up and asked them for help, and they will dedicate their next 24 hours to helping you learn everything you need to learn about Islam. That's how you make friends. As a Reaver, you have an easy in, you're asking them for help, and they will die to help you. Maybe not, but they'll love helping you. So at first it may seem like it's impossible to make friends. You stand out, you're the only one who doesn't look like an Arab or Southern Asian or blah blah blah, or an African. But it turns out it's easier for you than it is for anyone else. So use those little tricks and you'll make friends really, really easily. Thing number 5, and the last one, possibly the hardest of all. Talking to your family about your choice of converting to Islam. Now, everyone's story is different. Everyone's relationship with their parents are different, relationship with their sisters and brothers. There's no one way of telling your parents that you converted to Islam, but I have a few tips. First of all, let's go over the difficulties of it. You've grown up with them. They know you a certain way, and then you choosing Islam, for a lot of people, can be a big shock. A big shock. So, when you tell people that you've converted to Islam, telling your parents that you converted to Islam can be a big shock for them. 2 reasons for this. 1, they don't know what Islam actually is and what it means. The West, unfortunately, portrays Islam in quite a bad way. It doesn't portray it in the way it actually is, which is, peaceful, crazy levels of acceptingness, friendship, and I call it unforgivable giving, where they just give you everything and they don't ask for anything in return. That's Islam. Now, they've been taught that Islam is a cult to an extent, that it's dangerous, that a lot of people who convert to Islam have been brainwashed, and that it's just the list can go on. I say that because I've forgotten anything else, but the main one, but I don't want to say that because I might get blocked. Whoever's editing this, whether it's me or my little helper, bleep out the terrorism word and also remove this section here. So, how do you tell your parents that you've converted to Islam? Top tip, don't do it immediately. Take your time. If you can't practice because they are around, if you can't pray, if you can't maybe do wudu, you can't read Quran easily because they are around, do not worry. Get an app on your phone so it's a bit more discreet. Start learning to pray. Maybe pray whilst just sitting on a bench. Just think about the motions and think about what you have to do so that if they do walk in, you don't get caught in the action. For some people, it can be actually dangerous converting to Islam. Their parents may kick them out of their house. I've heard even worse stories. So taking it slow is important. Number 2, become a better person. Become really good. Make sure you practice everything Islam teaches you. Be unforgivably kind. Give people stuff without expecting stuff in return. Be clean. Be very ethical. Just be as good of a person as you can. Become 10 times the person you are now in terms of kindness. Your parents, your family will probably see that and they'll probably think, oh, he's a nice person. He's maturing, or she is maturing. Something going on really well here. Look at that. He's doing charity work. Look at that. He's helped these people. Look at that. Like, wow, what an awesome guy. And then when you do tell them, I've converted to Islam, the blow is going to be much different than if you just told them immediately, straight off the bat. Another important thing is to do it in a very casual way, because if you make it a big deal, if you tell them, hey mum, I've got to tell you something when I get home, and she's waiting all day for her at work, and she's like, what is it? And you're like, I can't tell you on the phone, I need to tell you in person, and she's going to panic, and then you sit her down and then you tell her. That's going to be a bit of a shock. To some people it may work, depending on your relationship with your parents, but I always say make it more casual. The more casual you make it, the more casual they react. For example, I'm 90% sure my dad knows I've converted to Islam. I've never specifically told him, but I've told him like, oh yeah, I'm going to Mecca, and he's like, oh, dead giveaway. So I think he knows. I specifically told my sister, and she was like, oh cool, don't really care, you do your thing. Told my brother, I think my brother just found out from Instagram or something. He doesn't really care too much. He seems cool with it. Yeah, I mean, there's no pressure to tell your family, and there's no pressure to be the perfect practicing Muslim if your family are going to get in the way. Especially if it's going to cause a lot of drama and chaos in your family, it's best to try and lessen that as much as possible. So, that wraps up the video. If you like this video, and if you want more stories from reverts, like some of the ones I gave in this video, like the mosque story, subscribe. I'll be creating a video soon, hopefully on my trip, on my first Umrah, which was a long time ago now, but I'll, recall the story. I almost got kicked out of Medina as well because of tattoos. So if you want to learn more about Islam, follow me. If you're a new revert and you need some help, follow me. If you are a Muslim and you just want to be inspired by a revert, give me a follow. With no further ado, goodbye. Masalama, as you say in Arabic.